Have you ever stood in a place where the weight of history is so heavy, you can almost feel the whispers of the past on the breeze? Today we're journeying to the coast of Ghana, to a site that holds centuries of stories within its walls, the magnificent yet haunting Elmina Castle. Before we step inside, let's rewind the clock. Long before any European sails appeared on the horizon, this area was a bustling hub of activity. The local people, part of what would become the Fante Confederacy, were skilled traders. The land was rich, not just in culture, but in a resource that would soon captivate the world: gold. The communities here had established intricate trade networks that stretched far into the African interior. Life was vibrant, centered around fishing, farming, and a deep connection to the land and sea. This wasn't an empty coastline waiting to be discovered. It was a thriving, self-sufficient society with its own leaders, traditions, and economies. It's crucial to remember this prosperous beginning, as it sets the stage for the dramatic changes that were about to unfold. Now picture this. It's the late 15th century. Europe is in the grip of the Renaissance, a time of exploration and ambition. The Portuguese, led by intrepid navigators, are pushing the boundaries of the known world, seeking new trade routes to the east and, more importantly, direct access to the legendary gold of Africa. For centuries, gold had trickled into Europe through trans-Saharan trade routes controlled by North African states, making it incredibly expensive. The Portuguese dreamed of bypassing these middlemen and tapping the source directly. Their caravels, marvels of maritime engineering, sailed further and further down the West African coast. In 1471, Portuguese explorers led by João de Santarém and Pero Escobar arrived at a part of the Gold Coast they named Elmina, meaning the mine, because of the abundance of gold they found being traded by the local people. The potential for immense wealth was undeniable. For a decade, they engaged in trade from their ships, but this was inefficient and vulnerable. They needed a permanent, fortified base to protect their interests, store their goods, and assert their dominance in the region. The decision was made. They would build a fortress, a bastion of Portuguese power on African soil. In 1482, a massive fleet set sail from Portugal under the command of Diogo de Azambuja. This was no small expedition. It carried everything they would need: hundreds of soldiers, masons, carpenters, and even prefabricated stones and building materials. Their mission was to construct a fortress that would stand for centuries. When they arrived, Azambuja negotiated with the local chief, Kwamina Ansa. The negotiations were tense. Kwamina Ansa was wary, astutely pointing out that friendships can sour when people live too close together. He preferred the existing arrangement of trading from ships, but Azambuja, combining persuasion with a clear show of force, was relentless. He offered gifts and promises of wealth through trade, while the presence of his armed soldiers sent an unspoken message. Eventually, a reluctant agreement was reached. The Portuguese were granted a piece of land to build their trading post. Construction began almost immediately, and it was a monumental undertaking. They chose a rocky peninsula, a strategic location with the Atlantic on one side and the Benha River on the other, making it easily defensible. The Portuguese named their new fortress Castelo de São Jorge da Mina, the Castle of St. George of the Mine. This wasn't just a simple fort, it was a statement. It was the first major European structure built in sub-Saharan Africa. Its high walls, imposing towers, and cannons facing the sea were designed to intimidate rival European powers like the Spanish and the French, who were also eyeing the lucrative gold trade. Initially, the castle functioned as intended, a bustling commercial center. Portuguese ships would arrive laden with goods like brassware, textiles, and tools. These were traded with the local Akan people for gold, ivory, and spices. The castle's storerooms were filled with unimaginable wealth. A small Portuguese community lived within its walls, including governors, soldiers, merchants, and a priest. A chapel was built, the first Catholic church in the region, signifying their intent to not only trade but also to spread their faith. For over a century, Elmina Castle was the headquarters of Portuguese operations on the Gold Coast, a symbol of their economic power and global reach. The gold that flowed through its gates helped finance Portugal's age of exploration and enriched the Portuguese crown beyond measure. But the purpose of Elmina Castle was about to undergo a dark and devastating transformation. As European powers began to establish vast plantations in the Americas, they needed a massive labor force to work the sugar, cotton, and tobacco fields. The horrifying solution they found was the transatlantic slave trade, and Elmina Castle was poised to become a central hub in this brutal enterprise. The demand for gold was gradually eclipsed by the demand for human beings. The Dutch, a rising maritime power, had long coveted Portugal's lucrative trade network. They saw the weakness in Portugal's grip, and after several failed attempts, finally captured Elmina Castle in 1637. The Dutch expanded and reinforced the fortress, but their primary focus shifted decisively from gold to the trade of enslaved people. The once golden storerooms were converted into dark, airless dungeons. The castle, which was built to control the trade in a precious metal, now became a prison for precious lives. Imagine the terror. Men, women, and children captured from their villages, sometimes hundreds of miles inland, were marched to the coast in chains. They were forced into the castle's dungeons, separated from their families, and held in unimaginable conditions. Hundreds of people were crammed into tiny dark spaces with no sanitation, little food or water, and no hope. They would languish here for weeks or even months. The upper floors, where the European governor and officers lived in relative luxury, stood in stark contrast to the suffering below. From their balconies, they could look out over the beautiful ocean, while just beneath their feet, humanity was being systematically broken. From the dungeons, the enslaved Africans were led through a narrow, dark passage to the infamous Door of No Return. This was the final portal from their homeland. As they stepped through that door, they left Africa forever, branded and shackled, to be packed onto ships for the horrific Middle Passage across the Atlantic. Millions of lives were stolen, families were shattered, and entire societies were destabilized. Elmina Castle stands as a silent witness to this immense tragedy, its very stones saturated with the pain and sorrow of generations. It was a factory of human misery, operating for over 200 years. In 1872, the Dutch ceded their territories on the Gold Coast, including Elmina Castle, to the British. The British continued to use the castle as an administrative center and a police training depot, but the slave trade had been officially abolished, though its dark legacy lingered. When Ghana gained its independence in 1957, the castle was handed over to the new nation. Today, Elmina Castle is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's no longer a place of trade or imprisonment, but a place of remembrance and education. People from all over the world, including many descendants of the African diaspora, come here to walk through the dungeons, to stand in the courtyard, and to gaze out from the Door of No Return. It's a powerful, emotional pilgrimage. It serves as a solemn reminder of the darkest chapter of human history, urging us to never forget and to fight against injustice and inhumanity in all its forms. The story of Elmina Castle is not just the history of a building, it's the history of Africa, Europe, and the Americas. It's a story of greed, cruelty, and immense suffering, but also a story of survival, resilience, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the history of Elmina Castle. The stories these walls hold are difficult to hear, but they are essential to understand our shared past. If you found this video meaningful, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into history. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time.